Hey, this game does get a bit intense, so you've been warned.
Where the hell am I?
Yeah, where are we? The young man groaned aloud, fishing his cell phone out of his pant pocket. The white, artificial light was blinding in the darkness. He tapped impatiently at the map on his phone, but it just continued cycling through a series of dots, refusing to load. He wiped the sweat from his brow and looked around. The moonlight trickled through the treetops, painting white streaks along the forest floor. There was just enough light that Carter could avoid tripping over his own feet. Still, he could not see through the darkness surrounding him. He could not even distinguish the shape of the individual trees. They all just looked like a single mass, smothering him with their shadow. An economics student at Tricone University, Carter was an avid hiker, taking any opportunity to venture into the wilderness as a way to procrastinate on his studies. While he was scrolling during his free hours at work, he had found a post about a trail that he hadn't visited in the mountains up north. Why not, he thought. He had grown a little tired of his usual trails, and it wasn't too far, a 2 to 3 hour drive on the highway. Unfortunately, the traffic on the interstate had been surprisingly crowded for a Saturday morning. After making it off the freeway and stopping quickly for a sandwich, it was already early afternoon. It had taken him another hour and a half to find the trailhead, nestled off the side of the road in a particularly untrodden region of the forest. The sign was faded so badly that he could only read half of the letters. At that point, he probably should have turned back, but he pressed on. He had already invested too much of his precious weekend hours to not do what he came for. He was already lost before the sun went down. When the light disappeared and he was plunged into inky darkness, he was doomed. Carter waved the phone in the air, as high as he could reach, praying that he could at least get one bar.
Are you lost?
Oh, hey there! A young boy was standing in the shadows of the trees nearby, moonlight illuminating his ink-black hair. He wore a white kimono and a pair of wooden guitar.
Yeah. I was on the trail to Cherry Falls, but I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. By the time I knew it, it was completely dark. Been wandering around trying to find the trail. Do you live around here? Could you point me in the right direction?
Yeah, I can take you back to the road.
You sure? Awesome.
Carter hopped over a few protruding tree roots to the boy's side and started following him into the forest. This is fine.
I'm Carter. What's your name?
Is the music too loud? It might be. Alright, hopefully won't have any problems now.
Rakuo.
That's a cool name. How old are you?
10.
They lapsed into an awkward silence. Carter wasn't sure how to talk to a 10-year-old. His sister was only a few years younger, and most of his cousins were older than him. Carter looked at the kid out the corner of his eye. The boy was eerily pale, his skin shining like ceramic in the moonlight. With his hair and clothes, he reminded Carter of the ghost from one of those Japanese horror films. The dark circles under Rakuo's eyes gave him a much older air that didn't match his childish face. The kid walked slowly, his eyes nervously flitting about his surroundings. Carter grew a little uneasy. What if the boy didn't actually know where he was going? Still, the college student followed Rakuo obediently. He didn't have any other options after all.
So, what were you doing out here? Wandering around by yourself? Even if it's close to your house, it's dangerous to be out this late.
Rakuo's eyes widened and then narrowed.
I was, getting out of the house.
Getting out of the house? Why?
I guess I don't like my home very much.
Fighting with your parents?
The college student's eyes softened in understanding. He remembered that age all too well. He had fought with his parents often. As an adult, those childish squabbles seemed so small and inconsequential to him now.
What about? Wanna talk about it?
It's hard to explain.
The child fell silent again.
How do you feel about your parents? Are they nice?
She gets mad. A lot.
Your mom? About what?
All sorts of things. My grades, and the way I act, and the stuff I wear. Everything. She's never happy, and she's always comparing me to my sister. It feels bad.
What happened this time?
Rakuo averted his gaze and bit his lip. After a moment, he looked up at Kata, hesitant.
It was a big argument this time. My family's not like everyone else's. We have a long history and a lot of traditions. When children are my age, you have to start doing your family duties. But I really don't want to.
Why is that?
It makes me uncomfortable.
Kata sensed that the kid didn't want to go into any more detail. He smiled.
Well, even if you're young, I think that you shouldn't be afraid of setting some boundaries. If something makes you uncomfortable, you should say so. Family traditions are important, but you are important too. Your parents should listen to what you have to say.
I don't think I can do that.
Sure you can. Your parents love you. They should respect your opinions. If you're open and honest with them, then I think that they'll understand. At the very least, it's better than running off. You're going to make them worried sick.
He looked up at the sky, admiring the moon.
I used to fight with my dad all the time, over the silliest stuff. I told myself that when I was old enough, I was gonna leave and never talk to him again. But when I got older, I realized that he was just looking out for me, you know? I don't know your parents, but I'm sure they're looking out for you in their own way.
You have a dad?
Yeah, I love him a lot. It's his birthday at the end of the month, actually. I'm taking him to a basketball game. Already got the tickets and everything.
Ah, the second sweet.
And I got him a gift. A new putter to up his golf game. One of those really fancy ones. Cost me 2 months of my paycheck.
Kata took his phone out to check the time. When the screen lit up, his eyes brightened.
Oh wait, I got some bars. No, crap, it's Happy. Wait, pretend you didn't hear that.
After fiercely tapping on his phone, Kata glanced at the boy, feeling guilty for his foul tongue.
What's wrong?
My sister called me like 5 times. Wait a sec, I'm gonna see if I can text her back.
The pair stopped. However, no matter how much Kata waved his phone at the sky, it was useless.
Can't get any bars. I'll have to call her when we get back to the road.
Kata started to walk, but to his surprise, Rakuo didn't follow. The college student turned around and reached down to hold the boy's hand. Rakuo's chilly fingers were trembling.
What's wrong? Are you tired?
No, I'm okay.
They started walking again, although Rakuo trudged so slowly that you could have thought the kid was a malfunctioning robot.
You have a sister?
Yeah, she's 17 now. She wants to go to Tricone University, just like me. She's coming in tomorrow night to see the campus. She was calling to make sure that I brought the conditioner that she likes. Don't ask me why she couldn't just bring some.
If you don't make it back, then what's she going to do? Is she going to be stuck outside?
Carter chuckled.
Don't worry, she's not going to come in until evening. I've got plenty of time to make it back to pick her up at the airport. Ow!
Wait, what? Rakuo was squeezing his hand now, so tightly that it felt like his fingers were being crushed. The boy turned around and started dragging the college student in the opposite direction.
Where are we?
I made a mistake. This isn't the way to the road. We need...
Rakuo.
Oh no! The boy froze. Slowly, he turned. Kata turned to look too. Oh, hi! Hey, she's cute. But the music's telling me otherwise. A woman was standing behind them, standing in the shadows of the trees. She wore a dark blue kimono, her hands folded so neatly in front of her that she looked like a statue. The shadows bled over her, painting her in darkness. She had a refined aura with a classic timeless beauty, a woman better suited to being captured with the ink strokes of a brush pen than a high-definition camera. Kata couldn't quite pinpoint her age, somewhere between 20 and 50, from the way she dressed and acted. She looked like she belonged on the set of a historical Japanese drama, not real life.
Is this your mom?
Kata whispered to the boy, but Rakuo ignored him.
You've been watching?
Hey there. The boy's fingers were shaking now, clammy and cold, holding Kata's hand in a firm grip.
Of course. And it's a good thing that I did. I should have known you'd do something like this. Ruin my efforts after I went through all that trouble to find you a good human for your first time.
I'm not doing anything. I caught him and I was taking him back just like I promised.
Stop lying. You're always lying. I saw you. You're trying to take him to the road.
Carter's skin felt icy. There was something very wrong about the situation. He tried to worm his hand out of Rakuo's grasp, but the boy held fast.
Stay behind me. I caught him. That's enough, isn't it?
The consumption is just as important as the hunt, if not more so. You know that.
He's a good person. A really good person. He's kind, and he cares about his father. He has a little sister, too. He's meeting her tomorrow. If he's not there, then she'll be left out in the cold with no place to go.
The woman sighed.
I'm disappointed. I thought that I taught you better. Yet here you are, so easily swayed by a human's guile. You just haven't seen the world yet. You don't understand. This man is wicked, like so many other humans.
Well, I don't know about Carter, but yeah, she's right about this one. Yeah.
You found him in these woods, didn't you? Right here, trespassing on our land. Acting like the entire earth is his property. Such egotism deserves to be punished, doesn't it?
Oh, you're gonna punish me, ma'am? I mean, sure. I mean, what are you gonna do to me?
Still, I don't think that he should die. Just for that.
Carter gasped, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He stared wide-eyed at the boy. Was Rakuo being serious?
Can't he say that he's sorry?
How childish. Stop disobeying me, Rakuo. Why are you always like this? Always so impertinent and obstinate. You never listen to me.
The boy stood his ground, his voice tinged with the slightest hint of defiance.
I don't want to. You should respect what I have to say.
The woman trembled, her eyes glazing over with icy rage. Carter stood in shock, watching 4 twisted black limbs sprout from her back. She wasn't human. If anything, she looked like a spider. Yeah? When the woman lunged towards the pair, Carter screamed, jerking his hand out of Rakuo's grasp. However, he didn't make it far. He tumbled, agony shooting through his legs like bullets. Lying on the ground, Carter wheezed. The pain that seared through his calves was quickly replaced by cold numbness. Although he tried to stand up, his legs wouldn't listen to him. They dangled from his torso like tubes of jelly. He scrambled at the nearby tree roots, trying to use them to drag himself along the ground. The woman raised an eyebrow before spearing the hapless student in the middle of the back with one of her spider legs. He collapsed, completely paralyzed, unable to do anything except blink.
And as for you...
As Rakuo's vision went black, the only thing he could hear was the disappointment in his mother's voice.
We're going home.
Okay, Mommy! When Rakuo awoke, his head throbbed. The side of his head was damp. His mouth was swimming in the taste of metal. He coughed, blood spurting from his nose and lips. He struggled to get on his elbows off the cold stone floor. He was sitting in a familiar room, lit by a couple of Kumiko lanterns. The flames inside filled the space with dim orange light. This was the basement underneath the Kumode estate. It was a room with no name, no official purpose. The dark underbelly where the family hid all the things that they didn't want to be seen. It was a room where they kept disobedient children. Rakuo had been locked in here on countless occasions, suffocated by the cold, damp darkness until he repented for his wrongdoings. It was also the room where Komodes kept their prey captive until they grew hungry. And it was the room where they fed. The flames from the lanterns flickered once more, shadows dancing along the walls. Hi, Mommy! The Komode matriarch sat at the other end of the room, On the steps leading out of the basement, her posture was impeccable, back straight, knees bent at a right angle, like a posed doll, very mindful, very demure. Oh god, I swear to god, like that freaking meme is stuck in my goddamn head. Her kimono was neatly folded with not a wrinkle out of place. Blood dribbled out of her mouth, down her neck. The underlayer that she wore through her dark blue kimono was flecked with crimson, the stain blooming like a small red flower in a white field. Kata was lying at the bottom of the stairs. His torso had been slashed down the middle from his throat to his pelvis. His ribs had been cracked open, splayed out like a pair of blood-stained wings on either side of his chest cavity. Inside, the student's organs glistened, dark pink in the dim firelight, ripe for consumption. It smelled delicious.
Look, I got everything ready for you. Now you just need to eat.
Thanks, Mom! Itadakimasu! Raku shook his head, unable to tear his eyes from Kata's contorted corpse.
I'm not hungry.
Raku, you're gonna need to eat eventually.
This is your duty. You'll eat whether you're hungry or not.
I don't want to eat. I'm not going to eat.
You little brat!
Do you want to humiliate me? What will everyone think, knowing that the Komode heir is too scared and soft to do his duties? That I raised a son like that.
She dug her fingers into Kata's abdominal cavity, extracting a plump, dark red organ. She held it out towards Raku.
Come. Here. This is the liver. Truly a delicacy. You'll like it.
And oddly nutritional. The boy didn't move. He just stared at the corpse's face, Kata's expression of anguish already stiffening from rigor mortis. Raku thought about the college student's comforting smile earlier that evening and the gentle way that Kata had held his hand. He shuddered, guilt stabbing his heart like 1,000 needles. His mother sighed.
When you were born, I should have killed you. There's no room for males in our family, as you know.
Raku pursed his lips. He had heard this story from his mother countless times, endless reminders of how he should be grateful just to be alive. The Komode family was made almost entirely of women. When the spider demons needed to procreate, they would seduce some man off the side of the road and eat him after the deed was done. If the baby was a daughter, they would treasure her, the precious continuation of the family bloodline. And if the baby was a son, they would eat him.
But I couldn't kill you. I loved you too much. And because I loved you, I went against everyone to keep you alive. You love me, don't you, Raku? If you love me, then you'll eat.
But Raku didn't agree. He didn't move to accept his mother's offering.
No.
The woman lunged forward, seizing Raku's chin and forcefully opening his mouth. She pressed the organ against his lips, its blood dripping onto his face and clothes. Hello?
No! No, 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 no!
The boy screamed, cried, wrestled, scratched, bit, anything he could do to escape her grasp. His spider legs sprouted from his back and clawed at his mother, tearing her clothes, drawing fine lines of red along her skin. The woman seized his collar and threw him to the floor, crushing the liver in her fist and tossing it at him too.
Fine. If you want to act like an adult, then I'll treat you like one. Maybe then you'll learn.
The hell do you mean by that? Raku tried to crawl away, his stomach scraped against the cold basement floor. He screamed when the woman speared him through the thigh, pinning him in place like a butterfly pinned to a corkboard. She stroked one of the limbs protruding from his back, her tapered fingertips gliding along the smooth, black surface. She grabbed one and pulled. Then Raku's mother ripped the legs off him one by one. He's fine, right? One? She pressed her geta into the small of Raku's back as she pulled, crushing the air out of his lungs. 2. Every time she took off a leg, she ate it. As she tore through the exoskeleton, the sickening crunches resounded through the basement. Oh, 3. Yikes. She only halted when he stopped struggling. He laid on the floor, splayed out like a specimen, almost completely motionless. His one remaining spider leg convulsed, the remnants of pain shooting through his nerve endings. The woman licked her lips before returning to the stairs. When she opened the door, she turned around one last time.
I'm doing all of this because I love you. I love you and I want the best for you.
Okay? I guess people who love each other eat each other. I mean, this is something which I've established a while ago.
If you want to live, then you'll eat.
Okay. The door closed. When the boy roused from his stupor, he was weak. Blood gushed from the stumps in his back, trickling down his skin and staining the white of his kimono. He knew what his mother had meant. Spider demons like him could recover from crippling injuries like this, but only if they ate, and only if they ate something big. Something like a deer, a cow, or a human. In the basement, there was only one thing to eat. Rakuo tried to look at Kata's corpse, but he couldn't. Instead, he shifted his gaze to the liver that his mother had dropped on the ground. It shone dark crimson, the lamplight glistening off the surface. Ooh. He reached down and picked it up. It was soft and wet, with the lingering warmth from his mother's iron grip. He raised it to his mouth. He began to hold his breath, and he bent down. He raised it to his mouth. He held his breath, and bent down. Yummy! It tasted so good. It was the most delicious thing that Rakuo had eaten in his entire life. The organ melted in his mouth like a fine marbled steak, the tender sweetness spilling over his tongue. He wanted more. He wanted to lick every morsel of the meat off the floor. He wanted to bury his face into the human's chest cavity and devour him until there was nothing left but bones. He approached the corpse, reaching for the succulent meat along the ribs. Then he saw Kata's face, his twisted, agony-filled expression. And the boy remembered how happily the college student had spoken of his father and sister. Rakuo vomited. Oh, ew! Ah! Okay. A liquidy mixture of acid and chewed up liver splattered onto the ground. The boy gagged, continuing to heave long after his stomach was empty. He crawled onto the opposite side of the room, as far away from the corpse as he could. He curled up against the wall. In the darkness of the basement, the boy made a wish. It was a quiet, pointless wish. He had no fairy godmother that would hear him, no magical guardian that would grant his plea. That wish, like so many before, would go unanswered. No one was coming to save him. Oh, hey. A pair of small, pale feet sprinted across the tatami. They made small tapping sounds as they made contact with the floor, like droplets of water falling into a still pond. Kaio knew that she wasn't supposed to run in the house, but the residents of the Komode household rarely admonished the precious youngest child. After being watered with nothing but effusive praise for her 6 years of existence, the girl had little to fear. Anyway, it was an emergency. A super secret special mission. Rakuo had been locked in the basement for 2 days now, and Kaio asked Mother why. Mother said that it was because Rakuo wasn't eating. They would let him out once he ate something. This confused the girl. Her brother liked to eat. He did it all the time. Rice, meat, fish, vegetables, noodles. He wasn't picky. He ate everything without complaint. Kaio said that they would make Rakuo his favorite, oyakudon. Maybe then he would eat. But Mother shook her head and patted Kaio's hair. She said that Rakuo wasn't a good child. He wasn't like Kaio, who ate whatever she was told. He needed to learn a lesson. Kaio pouted, but she didn't protest. Mother was right. Why was Rakuo being so bad? Still, she worried for her big brother. The basement was dark and damp, and it smelled horrible. He was probably crying down there. She knew that he cried sometimes, which, well, he does when he's alone, and thought that no one was watching. So she was going on a secret mission to save him, just this once. The little girl ran into her room and made a beeline for the basket, lying in the corner. It was filled to the brim with dolls and other stuffed toys, neatly arranged like a bouquet. She rummaged through the basket, taking the dolls out and throwing them to the side until she reached the bottom. There weren't many places to hide things in a room. Mother could easily find anything that was stored in the normal places. The drawers, the closet, the futon. Rakuo had helped Kaio find this little hiding place, a secret, just for the two of them. The bottom of the basket was lined with a knit blanket, decorated with small pink flowers. The girl pulled that out too. Her treasure laid beneath the blanket. Kaio rarely eats sweets. She was only allowed to eat desserts on special occasions like birthdays and New Year's. Even then, she usually only ate homemade mochi, jelly, or red bean soup. Mother always said that human desserts were filled with poison. Still, the little girl's mouth watered whenever they went to the grocery store, and she saw the candies lined up next to the checkout, encased in glossy plastic wrappers, like pieces of treasure. Last month, Rakuo had ushered her into his room, holding a finger to his lips. He took out his backpack and showed her what was inside. When she saw those sparkling pieces of candy, her eyes lit up. They shimmered as bright as lanterns along the dark fringes of her bangs. Rakuo explained that he had gotten them at school as part of Halloween. Kaio had never had chocolate before. She savored every bite, nibbling in an attempt to make the candy last as long as possible. When he saw that, Rakuo laughed and gave her all 5 bars. Since then, Kaio had treasured the candy, only sneaking it out every once in a while to take a small bite. It was undeniably precious. When she took it out of the basket, she swallowed, unsure whether she was ready to give it up. No, she was. Even if the candy was a treasure, her brother was more important. Rakuo wasn't eating because the food wasn't good, but he would eat this candy. Then mother would forgive him and let him out. Kaio gathered the remaining bars in her arms. She ran through the hallway, careful to tiptoe around the doorways. It took her a few minutes to arrive at the basement, which was almost on the other side of the house. She looked down the stairs, a little scared. She didn't like going down there. She had never gone to the basement without mother. She swallowed and crept down the stairs. She treaded lightly on each step, as if each one was a balloon that could pop at any moment. Her legs shook, and she clutched the candy bars in her arms so tightly that they started to melt, rubbing creamy brown stains on her skin. Kaio let out a sigh of relief when she reached the bottom. She licked the chocolate off her hands as she looked at her next obstacle. The heavy wooden double doors towered over the little girl. The light from the hallway cast a dull shine on the dark red paint. The handles were locked together with a heavy metal chain as thick as Kaio's forearm. She jumped up and grabbed the chain, jiggling it, but it was no good. It was locked securely. She grabbed one of the handles and pulled, putting all her weight into it. Ooh. Slowly, the door dragged along the ground. The chain prevented it from moving very far, but she was able to get an inch-wide gap between the doors. The room beyond the gap was pitch black, like paper doused in ink. Kaio called out into the darkness.
Rakuo?
There was no response. Her arms started to hurt from holding the door open. Still, she held fast and kept calling.
Rakuo? Rakuo, it's me.
Finally, she heard movement from inside the room. However, the sound was a little strange. She didn't hear footsteps. Instead, she heard scraping, as if someone was dragging something along the ground. Something hit the door, and suddenly it was much less heavy. Even when Kaio let go of the door's handle, it stayed in place. She tried to peek through the gap. The angle made it difficult to see, but she could vaguely make out her brother's silhouette as he leaned against the door.
Hey, Kaio.
His voice was hoarse and thin, like spider silk.
Mother said that you can't come out because you're not eating. Why not?
Not hungry.
Kaio pouted.
You should just eat. It's bad not to do what Mother says. Anyway, I brought you a present.
She fumbled the candy bars through the gap. Her fingertips grazed Raku's palm as he accepted them. His skin was cold, clammy, and slightly sticky.
You still had these. Did you not like them?
I did like them. I liked them a lot. But you're hungry, right? So I'm giving them to you.
Why did you nibble on all of them? Gross.
The girl's face flushed pink.
If you don't want them, give them back!
No, I want them.
Kaio waited with bated breath as the brother ate the candy.
That was good. Thanks.
I'll go tell Mother that you ate.
However, before the girl could run off, Rakuo stopped her.
Wait, don't get her yet. I'll, tell her myself when she comes down.
Kaio pouted.
Okay. Don't stay down here too long. I'll ask them to make your favorites for dinner tomorrow.
Ah, that's heckin' sweet. The girl disappeared up the stairs, her bare feet tapping against the hardwood. Right. When Rakuo couldn't hear his sister anymore, he crawled onto his hands and knees. He reached behind to touch the bloody stumps on his back. The candy gave him a modicum of energy, enough to seal his wounds. When he was no longer bleeding out onto the floor, he examined the doors. There was still a gap between them. Moments later, a small spider slipped through the gap. It crawled up the walls, down the halls, and out the gates, disappearing into the shadowy forest surrounding the estate. When the Komode matriarch returned to check on the basement later that evening, the son was nowhere to be seen. Hey, yo? 4 days, Rakuo ran. He didn't know where he was going or where he wanted to go. He just knew that he wanted to get away, to flee as far from that cesspool of venom as he could, to a place where none of the Komodes could ever find him. The boy had a few different forms that he could transform into. He could, of course, resemble an ordinary human boy. He could also morph into a monstrous, human-sized spider, capable of biting a person's head in two. For a while, he transformed into his gigantic spider self, skirting between the treetops with ease. However, he could not keep up that for long. Kaio's candy had given him the energy he needed to seal his wounds, but not much else. After that, he turned into his human form. Some passers-by looked with concern at the boy who was walking alone on the highway. His tattered white kimono was drenched with crimson, as if he had been doused in red paint. His feet were bloodied from walking bare along the asphalt. However, by the time the police were called, the boy had disappeared. After 4 days had passed, Rakuo could no longer maintain his human form either. Weakened from his injuries and the blood loss, he transformed into his last form, his final resort, the small, ordinary spider. Oh. He couldn't run very far, so he found some shelter. He stumbled into a nearby neighborhood and huddled in the shadow of a garbage bin, weaving himself a small web to sit on. The boy wasn't very skilled at catching prey. He only managed to hunt a single fly in 3 days. However, it was enough to keep him alive. This wasn't a bad existence, Rakuo thought. He could just sit here peacefully as an ordinary spider and catch insects every once in a while. He'd never have to return to that house or that basement or that life. However, his hopes were short-lived. Life on the outside came with its own harsh realities. One evening, Rakuo woke with a start. A pair of large, hazel eyes stared down at him. In the next moment, a paw crashed down on the web like a tidal wave, ripping his small abode asunder. Rakuo scrambled to get away, but he stumbled. He was still missing the 3 legs that his mother had ripped off his back, making it difficult to keep his balance. He collapsed on the ground, an easy target for this feline hunter. The cat smashed its paw on one of Rakuo's remaining legs, pinning him in place. For a few minutes, the cat played with his prey. He would let Rakuo go, and before the spider could scramble away, he would crush Rakuo's abdomen beneath his paw again. When the feline grew tired of this game, he started to swing at Rakuo, batting the spider around like a ball. Rakuo took the opportunity to flee, darting into the grass. He ran, faster than he had ever run in his entire life, the cat's hot breath on his heels. He jumped onto the wall of a nearby house, scaling it as he dodged the cat's enthusiastic swipes. There! The window was cracked, sealed with a haphazard mess of duct tape. Rakuo slipped into a gap in the glass. The cat hissed, pawing at the glass before retreating. Ah, this is a nice room. He was in what looks like a child's room, though it was somewhat bare. Some mattresses covered in a pink bedspread sat in the corner. A couple of animal plushies lay atop them. A small desk resided in the opposite corner. The school handouts were neatly arranged in a file organizer. The array of markers, pens, and pencils were all placed into a homemade ceramic mug decorated with a panda. The books in the bookshelf were meticulously lined up, organized by series. A couple of awards for academic achievements were taped on the walls. The room was empty. Rakuo crawled up the wall, towards the ceiling, hoping to find some quiet spot to rest. He was feeling so faint. Rakuo jolted awake when the ground underneath him moved. What? He was staring into a pair of massive brown eyes. He jumped. He skittered around, fighting himself on a human hand. The girl squeaked, dropping Rakuo on the bed. He tried to scurry away, but he was too tired. He held hold on the pale pink bedspread, shaking. Hey there.
So you are still alive. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm sorry.
I find it kind of funny how it suddenly turned into a romantic scene. Oh god, Rakuo was really smitten, huh? She cupped her hands underneath Rakuo, scooping him into her palms. She deposited him on the windowsill.
The window's broken, so I can't open it. But there's a crack there. You should be able to get out.
However, Rakuo didn't move. He looked outside. He could see the cat prowling around, stretching its claws. When the spider didn't leave, the girl leaned forward and examined Rakuo.
Is it because you're hurt? You don't have all your legs. You're missing... Gosh, you lost 3 of them. Did you come in here because you were hurt and scared?
The girl bit her lip in thought before turning to leave the room.
Wait here.
Rakuo lingered on the windowsill, not quite sure what to do. Should he try to run into some deserted corner of the girl's room? Should he test his luck against the cat again? His thoughts were foggy. His body felt weak, too dehydrated to move properly. Before he could decide, the girl returned. She was holding a knife. Rakuo shrank back towards the wall, looking for some way to escape. But she didn't try to stab him. Instead, she took out an empty glass jar and a plastic lid. She took the knife and poked several holes in the lid before putting it into the jar, testing the fit. When the girl scooped her hands under Rakuo, he didn't resist. He was too weak to escape anyway. She gently dropped him into the jar. The sour scent of pickles lingered on the inside of the jar, but otherwise, it was clean and well arranged. Soft soil layered the bottom with an array of twigs and dead leaves over the top. An orange bottle cap set in the corner, filled with clean water. Rakuo crawled around, poking the sticks and leaves. He dipped his fangs into the water. The liquid was cool, refreshing. The girl dropped the corpse of a small moth next to Rakuo.
I think that spiders eat insects. This is all I could find for now, but I'll get you some more later.
She brushed the fragments of plastic from the lid before screwing it over the top of the jar. Rakuo looked up with a little apprehension as his escape route disappeared.
I read that spiders can regrow their legs when they molt. I won't keep you in there forever. You can just stay a little while. Until your legs grow back. Okay?
The girl tapped the glass a couple of times and smiled.
Don't worry. You're safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you.
Rakuo's chest felt strange. No one had ever told him that before, that he was safe. He had never felt safe. Not at home, not in his mother's arms, not in his own bed. Even when things were okay, he knew that the calm was temporary. If he did anything wrong, no matter how small, that peace would be ripped away in an instant. Rakuo relaxed. The small jar was somehow comforting. It wasn't so bad being in this girl's cage. It was better than his cage back home, at least. And so, Rakuo's life as the girl's pet began. She took good care of him. When she was at school, she kept him hidden next to the bed, but when she returned, she put him on the windowsill to get some sun. She changed his water twice a day. Every day, she searched for dead insects, making sure he had a steady supply of food. She even kept a notebook where she meticulously made notes about his condition, his energy levels, his appetite, the current state of his legs. Slowly, Rakuo recovered. He wasn't overly enthused with the meals, but they gave him his much-needed energy. He couldn't regrow his missing legs. He would need to eat a much larger meal for that, but after a few days, he had recovered enough to turn back into a human if he wanted to. Still, he stayed in the girl's jaw. He didn't have a reason to leave. In fact, he rather liked it there. There were 3 members of the girl's household. The woman always left first. After waking up, she would sluggishly plaster some makeup on before microwaving last night's dinner. Before leaving, she checked that she had enough cash in her wallet for lunch and groceries. She wasn't allowed to have a credit card. Lastly, she would rush out of the house before the break of dawn. The girl left second. Her mornings were orderly. She woke up, brushed her teeth, got dressed, neatly arranged her cereal and milk on the table before eating, made sure that the dishes were clean and her backpack was zipped tight before walking out just in time to meet the bus. The man didn't leave. He never woke up at the same time. Sometimes he would rise an hour after the girl left. Sometimes he would be in bed long after noon. As soon as the man arose, he meandered to the kitchen, where he cracked open a cold beer. He'd open the fridge, curse, and then order takeout. After that, he sat on the couch for another productive day of alcohol-muddled television, as he waited for his wife to return home to cook dinner. The girl's life was quiet. She went to school, came home, fed Rakuo, did her homework, and ate dinner. If she had some free time, she would read through books that she had checked out from the library, including a few about spider biology. She also kept a couple of containers filled with soil on the windowsill. She carefully watered those containers every day, waiting for them to sprout. Sometimes she would take out her video game console, a small yellow handheld Pal Play. She laid on her bed, losing herself in the virtual world until it was time to go to sleep. The girl talked to Rakuo often. She wasn't expecting a response, of course, but she just liked having someone to talk to, someone that would listen. They were normal, little conversations. Sometimes she told him about her day at school, or about her favorite book, or about a video game that she wished that she could buy. Sometimes she chattered about random animal facts that she had memorized. Sometimes she rambled about her dreams for the future. Rakuo listened. He liked hearing her talk about all those little things. They were different and new. He had spent almost his entire life at the Komode estate. He never watched TV or played games. He was always told not to talk too much to the other kids at school. He had never thought about what the future might look like. The boy treasured those chats. It was as if the girl's life was a flower field, and she was showing him those flowers, one at a time. On one chilly afternoon, the girl burst into the room. She grabbed Rakuo, brandishing her backpack eagerly.
I went to the pet store today, and they gave me a couple of crickets for free.
Oh, sweet! She took a big plastic bag out of her backpack. 2 small crickets bounced around the bottom. She dumped the prey into the jar.
Eat up.
She leaned her chin on her elbows, watching him with anticipation. Rakuo looked at the 2 nervous critters with distaste. He would have far preferred meat or anything else, but he couldn't complain. The girl was trying her best. She had no way of knowing that he wasn't a normal spider. It wasn't difficult to catch the 2 critters in the small container. Rakuo sank his jaws into both of them, stuffing out their lives with venom. He set one aside before beginning to make a meal out of the other. The girl smiled and took a notebook out of her file organizer. She carefully selected a black, orange, and pink pens before she began making her notes about Rakuo's condition for the day. This is fucking cute! She also made notes about the plants on the windowsill, beaming when she saw that they had sprouted.
You know, you aren't my first pet. I used to have a cat, a really cute tabby. I named him Summer. He liked to sleep in my bed, and he always purred when I scratched him behind the ears.
Aww.
But whenever Dad got mad at me, he would hurt Summer. And he would tell me that it was my fault.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I was afraid that Summer would. That my dad would. So I gave Summer away to my friend.
The girl smiled and tapped the glass.
It's nice that you're so small. Easy to hide.
That is so sad. God.
When I grow up, I'll be a vet. Then I can have as many pets as I want. And I can take care of them too.
A bang resounded from the kitchen, followed by several curses. The girl perked up. She opened her door a crack, listening intently. She returned to her desk and grabbed her headphones and her Pal Play. She headed to the door, however, after a moment of hesitation, she turned around. The girl picked up Rakuo's jar and held it to her chest. I hate this. She opened the door to her room. The cursing was louder now. The slurred, incoherent words echoed throughout the house, like the growls of a beast. The girl could hear her mother's voice too, softer, her words of anger steeped in hesitance and fear. The girl tiptoed down the hallway. She entered the bathroom, locking the door behind her. She didn't turn on the light. Instead, she placed Raku's jaw on the side of the tub before sitting on the tub mat next to him. The headphones snapped over her ears. The PAL play illuminated, filling the darkened room with cold white light as the logo danced on the screen. Raku chewed on the half-digested remains of his cricket, watching the girl play. She had a few different games. The monster collecting RPG where you caught different critters to do battle. An action-adventure where you had to rescue a princess from a castle and defeat an evil emperor to save the land. But her favorite was a much simpler game, Space Blasters. In it, you took control of a spaceship, shooting down a series of enemy ships and alien invaders. The game was endless. Every few seconds, new ships would appear on the other side of the screen. The round only ended when you lost. The girl liked this game. When she played it, she didn't need to worry about the moment when she beat the final boss, the moment when she would inevitably be jolted out of that peaceful virtual world. She could just play forever and ever, even when her fingers started cramping and her eyes began to strain. Her motions were efficient and precisely timed, almost mechanical, the result of years of diligent practice. As soon as one row of enemy ships disappeared, the girl continued to the next small white bullets, mercilessly mowing down her opposition. As soon as the girl lost and the round ended, she would restart. The curses and shouting continued, but inside the bathroom, they were a distant storm. Here, the girl was safe, protected by the lock on the door and the headphones over her ears, and the comforting distraction of a video game. Here, the girl could pretend that she was somewhere else, out of this house, out of this reality. Raku stared at the PAL play, mesmerized by the flashing lights.
That looks fun.
The girl stayed in the bathroom long after the shouts ceased. She only came out when the adults went to bed. Raku started noticing strange things about the girl after that. He noticed when her hair and clothes were mussed, as they were typically neat and orderly. He noticed the bruises that blossomed on her skin, the dark marks on her arms and wrists. He noticed when she seemed withdrawn and quieter than usual. You could hear arguments echoing from the downstairs oven. The screams and swears rang through the house. The only quiet place was the girl's room. Even amongst the din, the girl would sit noiselessly, trying her best not to attract any attention. A stone in a storm, a gazelle playing dead in a den of lions. The girl's sprouts grew for a short time, but it wasn't long before they became long and spindly. Soon, they withered away. There wasn't enough light in this darkened room. The plants reminded him of the girl, Raku thought. A small life, struggling to grow in a place that the sun didn't reach. One afternoon, Raku waited patiently for the girl. He started counting the minutes until her return. He was familiar with what time her bus arrived from school each day. In the distance, he could hear the door open. However, the girl didn't hurry to her room as she usually did. Murmurs emanated from the living room. Then they escalated to shouts. There was a cry of pain, or yelling. Not even the closed door could muffle it. They started to argue, if you could call it that. The girl's voice was so quiet that it was barely audible, while the man sounded like a thunderstorm. Eventually, the girl returned. When she picked him up, he could see the splotch on her left cheek, already reddening. Her hair was in disarray too, as if it had been savagely pulled away. She didn't try to talk to him. She didn't take her usual notes either. She just refilled his water and put him on the windowsill. Then she curled up on her bed. She didn't move for a long time. When the sun started to set, she finally got up and proceeded with her routine like a robot, showering, doing her homework, eating dinner. She only remembered Raku on the windowsill as she was about to go to sleep. She was about to put him on the floor when she reconsidered. She nestled the jar against her pillow and laid down next to it.
There were parent-teacher conferences at school today. There were so many cool parents there. There was a doctor, and a lawyer, and a scientist. One kid's mom even brought in homemade cupcakes.
The girl's gaze lowered.
My mom couldn't come. My dad didn't come either. My friend Emma hasn't been doing that well in school lately. And when her dad came and found out, he was surprised. He started telling her off right in the middle of the courtyard. Then Emma burst into tears. She couldn't stop crying. Do you know what her dad did?
Rakuo didn't know, but he thought about his own mother. He could already hear the screams, the insults, the derogatory remarks. He already knew that she would throw him in the basement, and when he had repented, she would cage him at his desk. She would monitor him as he studied until she was certain that he would never make the same mistakes.
He hugged her, and he said that he was sorry. He said that he was wrong for scolding her in front of everyone, and he told her that he'd make it up to her. He said that it was okay that her grades weren't perfect and that they could work on it together. I thought
The girl choked, tears welling in her eyes.
that was so nice. She had such a nice dad.
She buried her face into her stuffed orca, unable to continue. Raku's heart twisted for the girl. He remembered how cheerfully she had smiled at him when they first met. He hadn't realized how rare those smiles were. The man downstairs was a demon wearing human skin, just like Rakuo, a demon that devoured the smiles of the people that he should have loved. The world wouldn't mourn a demon. When the woman woke up, she carefully applied a thick layer of foundation over the dark bruise covering her face. She didn't have time to eat breakfast, so she just grabbed the Tupperware from the fridge. She would have to eat later. When the girl woke up, she went about her morning as usual. She filled the spider's water and set him carefully next to the wall by the bed, before walking out to catch the bus. When the man woke up, he was groggy, his head spinning from his hangover. That bitch had put him in a particularly foul mood yesterday. How could she even think about going on a long, expensive trip to visit her sister? God! He couldn't even afford that! Sometimes, it felt like he was the only one thinking about the family, the only one with an ounce of responsibility in his bones. He heaved himself off the couch and went to the fridge, cracking open a cold beer. He peered inside, searching for food. He cursed. The Tupperware was gone. The woman had probably eaten all the food from last night's dinner before she left for work. Frickin' selfish. He had told her over and over to leave food for him, but she never listened. His eyes wandered around the empty house. The man's anger was bubbling now, but there were no targets on which he could offload his frustration. The girl was still at school, and the woman wouldn't be back until the evening. He scowled and stalked upstairs. He opened the kid's door. The girl usually avoided provoking his ire. She had learned to be meek and unassuming, staying out of her father's sight. So when the man wanted a reason to be angry at his daughter, he had to go looking for it. He rifled through her bookshelf, her desk, her closet, looking for anything that the girl might be hiding. Then he looked next to the bed.
What the hell is this?
He picked up the jar, dangling it in front of his face. His pupils contracted when he saw the large black spider inside. Rakuo froze when he saw the man. He had never seen the man before, but he knew. This was the monster that lived downstairs. The man pressed his face against the glass, his breath fogging the surface. He looked at the spider intently. Then, he put the jar back under the bed. Rakuo hadn't expected that. He had expected the man to immediately take him and toss him outside or in the toilet. Yet the man just went to the door, shutting it behind him. A few moments after the man left, the realization sank into Rakuo like a dagger sinking into his heart.
Oh no.
When the girl opened the door, she didn't say anything. No, I'm back! No, I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat? No rambling about her friends or her day at school. She knew that her mother wouldn't be home at this hour. When she entered the living room, she was surprised to see the man on the couch looking up at her. He never did that. He was always so engrossed in his TV or his booze to pay any attention to his daughter. As the girl crept through the room to the stairs, the man's eyes followed her. His gaze bored into her back like nails. She felt uneasy. She walked faster, eager to return to her room. As soon as she entered, she dropped her backpack on the ground and went to her bed. She reached down and picked up her pet, examining him. He was a little weird today. He kept scraping at the glass with his front legs. The door opened with a bang. The girl jumped, nearly dropping the jar. She plastered herself against the wall as her father stalked towards her. He gestured wildly at the spider in her arms.
What the fuck is this thing, Nelli?
The girl couldn't speak. Her terror had its hands around her throat, choking every word out of her. She could only wait, trembling, wondering what her father would do next.
Why are you bringing this shit into my house? My fucking house! I got enough on my plate without you making a mess of everything, bringing disgusting insects in here!
He slapped the girl upside the head. She tumbled to the floor, head spinning, but she kept a firm hold of the jar. She didn't let it fall. The man reached down and tried to grab the container from the girl, but she wrapped herself around it. She huddled on the ground, protecting Rakuo with all of the strength in her small frame. She was going to keep the spider safe. She promised! But little girls are no match for adult men. The man flipped the girl over, shaking her like a rag doll. He took her fingers and pried them off, bending them until it felt like they were going to break. When the girl's father had snatched the jar from her grasp, he held it above his head like a trophy. Rakuo was floating in the air. Clumps of dirt and twigs danced around him. And in the next moment, he was falling. No, he was plummeting. Rakuo smashed into the cold floorboards in a storm of glass shards. He skittled across the floor like a skipping stone, limbs flailing helplessly through the air. He finally came to a stop under the chest of drawers, landing on a particularly large dust bunny. Before he could get on his feet, Rakuo jumped. Tremors ran through the ground like an earthquake. As the man stamped around the floor, kicking the glass and dirt everywhere, the girl shrunk against the wall.
Where'd it go? Fuck!
He slammed his hand against the wall.
Clean this shit up! And when you find that thing, kill it. Understand?
The girl was silent. The man spoke again, his voice roaring through the small room.
Did you hear me, Nelli?
Yeah?
Fucking hell, stupid-ass kid. You and that bitch are always making my life hell.
He gave the remnants of the homemade terrarium one last kick before leaving the room, slamming the door behind him. The girl clung to the wall for several more minutes, too shocked to respond. When she could move her trembling legs, she started to sweep up the soil in her hands. She winced as the smaller glass shards sank into her skin, stinging her palms. Fat tears rolled down the girl's cheeks. She tried to brush them away, but they continued to gush out, the salty water intermingling with the streaks of blood on her fingers. She opened her mouth, and she made a wish. It was a quiet wish, barely audible in the room's stifling silence. A pointless wish. After all, there was no one around to hear it, but the girl just couldn't keep her feelings inside any longer. Her fear, her resentment, her fury, her betrayal, it all bubbled inside, her emotions boiling over into a couple of sentences, brimming with all the hatred that she had in her heart.
I wish he'd die. I wish he'd just disappear and die.
When she heard those words, the girl felt a tinge of guilt. She didn't want to feel that way about her own father, but at the same time, it was a relief. She had wanted to say those words aloud for so long, to give a voice to the pain that she had locked away. Regardless, the fragile wish didn't mean anything. It would disappear, swallowed by the room's silence. Those words would wither away, like everything else in this house. She looked down. The spider had left its hiding spot under the bed and was looking up at her expectantly. She scrubbed away her tears, picking up the spider and deposited him on the windowsill. He turned his head, as if giving her one last look farewell before disappearing through the cracked glass. The man clenched a cigarette between his teeth, struggling to ignite the lighter. When it finally lit, he took a deep inhale, savoring the sweet, toxic decadence of the tobacco as long as possible. As he exhaled, the pale swirl waltzed into the depths of the night. When the man lifted the cigarette to his lips for a second round, he squinted. There was a dark blob sitting on top of the garbage bin. It was too large to be a cat. He took a step forward. It was a boy, a scrawny, youngish-looking boy, wearing some weird tattered costume, like a hospital gown? Nelli's age? The boy perched on the bin, arms wrapped tightly around his calves. He rested his chin on his knees, appraising the man with a pair of eerily icy eyes, partially masked by dark bangs.
What are you doing, kid?
The boy remained as quiet as a mouse. The man sighed. He took a third draught, making sure to blow the smoke in the boy's direction.
This is my house. That's my bin. Get out.
The boy didn't respond. Instead, he released his arms and let his legs down, dangling them over the edge of the garbage bin. However, he made no movement to jump down. The man scowled. He was feeling irritated now. He had enough of snotty little brats today. He tolerated this cheekiness from Nelli because she was his daughter. He wasn't obligated to play along with some stranger. The man threw the burning cigarette butt down, not even bothering to stamp it out. He stepped towards the boy, seizing the child by the collar and lifting him off the bin. The boy didn't panic or flail. He hung there as lifeless and limp as a rag doll.
Get off my property, brat!
The boy's saucer-like eyes widened and blinked once as the man's spittle sprayed all over his face, dousing him in the odor of alcohol and tobacco. In the next moment, the child's arm snaked around the man's neck, yanking with ferocity. It snapped before the boy's fangs sunk into the man's jugular. The man didn't get another chance to scream. Rakuo sat cross-legged on the fallen log, his dining table dimly lit by the moon's watchful eye. Oh, hell yeah! The man's body was draped over the log in front of him. So the word body was probably too charitable. At this point, it was little more than a pile of dismembered limbs. Rakuo wiped his mouth with his sleeve before using the claw attached to his arm to peel another strip of flesh from the man's bones. It was a simple task. The digestive fluid had already softened his meal so much that it was as easy as eating oatmeal with a spoon. He dropped the meat into his mouth and chewed. The taste was revolting. While the meat had the addictive sweetness that Carter's flesh had, it also had the undercurrents of chemical bitterness and earthy sourness. The man's addictions had permeated his entire body until his essence was nothing but tobacco and alcohol. Rakuo's family members would have abandoned the chore of consuming this rotten corpse a long time ago. But Rakuo closed his eyes, held his breath, and swallowed. As the masticated sinew crawled down his throat, it just danced under Rakuo's eyelids. The girl would wake up 5 minutes before her alarm, as she always did, sunlight dousing her face in a yellow halo. She would sneak quietly into the living room, afraid to wake the man with the hair-trigger temper. When she didn't see him, she would probably look around, confused. She would also check the other rooms. And when she couldn't find him, her face would brighten. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't imagine this part. What would her smile look like? How lovely and radiant would it be? After all, her demon was gone. How happy would she look? Rakuo grinned to himself, half-drunk from the giddiness and the alcohol in his meal. He picked up the half-eaten leg and chomped into it with relish, savoring every foul bite. He was a bad person, a monster. That was okay. Even though he had succumbed to the wickedness of his heritage and his biology, he had also done a good thing. He had made that girl happy. She was free.
I'm a monster, but I can be a monster that does good things. A demon that kills demons.
And that was enough. Even though it was past midnight, the Komode household was bustling with activity. The servants rushed to the entrance courtyard, jostling each other to get a better view. The young master was standing at the gate. His kimono was filthy. It was tattered and covered in a myriad of bloodstains, old and fresh. He had lost his geta somewhere, his feet tracking bloody footprints onto the well-kept stone paths. Moments after his arrival, the doors to the main house burst open.
Where have you been? You...
However, before she could continue, Rakuo thrust his closed fist in front of his mother's face. Slowly, he unfurled his fingers as if he was unwrapping a gift. An eyeball sat in the palm of his hand. The yellowed white of the eye was laced with red blood vessels, framing the dilated pupil. The bloody remnants of the optic nerve trailed down his wrist, swaying in the cool night breeze like the tail of a kite. It was a splendid trophy, a fresh eyeball from a human corpse, unmistakable proof that he had fulfilled his duties.
Oh, my Rakuo.
The woman's eyes were brighter than Rakuo had ever seen. Her voice was sweeter than he had ever heard. She swept her son into her arms, squeezing him tightly, stroking his hair and his cheeks like a precious doll.
I was so worried, but somehow you exceeded my expectations. Such a splendid hunter already. I taught you so well.
She lifted his chin and kissed his cheek. He flinched. Her lips were cold against his skin, with none of a mother's warmth. Raku's fist squeezed tight around the eyeball, squishing it until the innards oozed through his fingers like cold jam. The Komode matriarch was normally frigid as ice. She treated her son with the strict professionalism that one would expect from an employer. She only expressed outward affection like this on the rare occasion, a reward for pleasing her. Rakuo wormed out of her grasp, evading his mother's artificial attachment. He opened his hand. The ruptured remnants of the eye dribbled onto the stone underfoot.
I'm going to my room.
Of course. You must be exhausted. I'll prepare a bath and a meal.
Her cloyingly sweet voice faded into nothingness as Rakuo ran into the house. He sprinted down the hallway, refusing to pause for breath until he reached his room. He slammed the sliding door shut. He reached into his closet and pulled out the heavy, covering futon that was folded neatly inside. He dragged it to the corner of his room and swathed himself in it, curling up on the floor like a giant, pillowy potato bug. Rakuo pressed his cheek against the ridges of the tatami, blinking back tears. He wiped his right palm against the front of his shirt, trying to erase the vulgar traces of his deed. Someday, he would leave this house. Someday, he would be free too. 10 years later, Tricone University. Oh, hey! Rakuo yawned, not bothering to cover his mouth. Last night's raid had been particularly difficult. A few of their guild members had to cancel, so they were forced to party up with some randos. The new additions were complete novices who didn't know the mechanics in the slightest. After one of the randos aggroed the boss and wiped almost the entire raid, Rakuo ended up soloing the final quarter of the boss's health as the only damage dealer. It had been a jaw-clenching 30 minutes. He looked at the book in his hand, the spider's thread and other stories. He wanted to hurry up and check this thing out so that he could go back and start on his homework. The line wasn't that long. He was number 4, but for some reason, the person at the front was taking an abnormally long time. He had been chatting with the librarian for over 15 minutes at this point. Rakuo groaned. Maybe he should go home and come back later. His eyes caught on the backpack of the girl standing in front of him. A keychain swung from the handle. A small white and blue pixel art spaceship.
Space blasters?
He hadn't meant to say anything, but the words spilled out before he could stop them. The girl turned around. Rakuo froze. She looked around in confusion before twisting her head to look at her bag. Her face relaxed.
That's right. I'm surprised you recognized it. Not many people know space blasters.
She laughed and brushed a few springy locks of hair out of her face.
It's a bit old, but that game was my entire childhood.
The girl looked up at Rakuo, eyebrow crinkled quizzically.
Is something wrong? Is there something on my face?
She smiled. Anyone could tell that it was a timid smile, a mask for nervousness when dealing with a stranger. But Rakuo didn't notice. Instead, that smile struck him like a beam of sunlight, clearing away all the other thoughts in his brain until the only thing that he could see was the girl's face. Her smile was bright. It was brighter and more lovely and more radiant than he could ever imagine. She looked like the sun. He was glad. There were no bruises, no dark circles under her eyes, no furrowed brow. She seemed happy. So much happier than she had been when he had seen her last. A strange feeling sprouted in his chest, a strange, almost hopeful feeling. He swallowed before opening his mouth.
What's your name?
Oh, that was good. That was so freaking good. God damn. Anyway, yeah, that was Kanau. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do want to play this game for yourselves, link to the game will be in the description below. This game is basically the prequel to another game I played before, Karamu, and I have been meaning to play this game for a long time, and I'm so glad I finally picked it up. This was, God, I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the story to bits. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of the day, and as always, I'll be seeing you in the next video. This is Lion, signing off. Ciao.